It factors the productivity in the schedule. More we will hear from Ms. Saravanan. How are we going to conduct this webinar? By default, all participants are muted. This is to keep voice quality better. To ask question, please use the question panel. The speaker will take the questions at the end of the session. In case if questions are more and we run out of time, we will send response to all questions in an email to all the participants. Today's speaker is Ms. Ambal Saravanan. She works with Scope International Private Limited, a subsidiary of Standard Chartered Bank. She is a rank holder in computer science engineering. She is MBA from ICFAI University and has around 20 years of experience in IT industry. In various roles as project manager, program manager, IT head, PMP trainer, and head of the management competency development. She is a certified function point specialist also, and from IFPUG in 2006. She published a case study moving from technology executors to business enablers, which was published in PMI All India Conference Souvenir and was presented in PMI Chennai chapter. She presented a technical paper, Dynamic Scheduling in Google Era, in PMI Global Scheduling Conference in New York few months ago, introducing Critical Path Plus. Today's webinar is based on this paper. I welcome Ambal to the webinar and hand over mic to her. Ambal, it is yours.
Thank you, Vivek. Welcome you all to this webinar on Critical Path Plus. Vivek has given a context of what it is. To re-emphasize, it's a new scheduling technique for project management. And what is it new? Because it was presented, it was shortlisted by a panel of judges across the globe. And I had gone for the PMI's Global Scheduling Conference to present it in New York early in the year. During the webinar for the next 1 hour, I'll be covering on what are the challenges that all of us as project managers have today. I'll be touching upon 3 of the concepts: theory of constraints, critical chain, and blue ocean strategy. Then I'll introduce you to Critical Path Plus. I'll talk about productivity index and what is the definition of it in CP Plus, how you can compress schedule using CP Plus, and I would compare Critical Path versus Critical Path Plus and what are the benefits you get in CP Plus. And last, I would be sharing with you, if you are interested in implementing CP Plus in your organizations or in your projects, what are the steps that you need to do. So that's going to be the coverage for the next 1 hour. And we would have logical breaks in between, 2 or 3 breaks that are planned in between, and there is a detailed Q&A session towards the end. So if you have any questions, please note down the slide number and the questions, and we would take them during the break, or you could post it on the question chat online. So moving on to the first slide. What are the challenges for project managers today? If some of you have been project managers for the last 1 or 2 years, it's different. But if you have been a project manager for 1 or 2 or 3 decades, you would know that the challenges for project managers are changing. What are the top 4 that are evolving today that is running as an imperative for many of the project managers? Number 1 is the increasing complexity. All of us who've done PMPs or read through the PMBOK are very familiar with the triple constraints. So those days it is said that a project manager who is successful in managing the triple constraints is said to be successful. But gone are the days of the triple constraints. Today, project managers have a web of constraints to manage, and the complexity is exponentially increasing in projects. So challenge number 1 is to handle increasing complexity. And number two, all of us know that this is a Google era. Google has changed the way life is a decade back and today. What has it done? Earlier, if you look at the product or the customers, only the senior management or the marketing departments would know what are the products, what are the customers that the competitors are working on. Today, Google enables the customers to gain competitive intelligence. So any product company can use Google as a channel to know about what the competitors are planning. And while some information is about the features of a product are available, the competitor could start working on it and deliver projects faster. So it also combines with the second challenge related to Google is the need for speed. There is an exponential increase in the speed at which a customer demands a project delivery today as compared to a decade ago. And the fourth challenge that comes is more scope with same or probably at a lower cost. So while volatile recommends keep coming in, at the same time, so much of cost or schedule is not given to the project managers. Gone are the days when a waterfall lifecycle model is comfortable for a project manager. The focus is now moving towards agile delivery, creating business value, and innovation. So what do all these challenges say? It means that it is time to think laterally to address these challenges. So that's how a new scheduling technique was born, which is called CP+, which will address some of these challenges and help you to deliver projects. What is CP+? To re-emphasize, it's a new scheduling technique. It synergizes the best of critical chain concepts with critical path approach, leveraging the blue ocean strategy. The diagram here will explain how the three of these concepts have been taken and critical path plus scheduling technique has been created. So what is the benefit that you will get if you adopt critical path plus? It enables efficient and optimum resource loading. It enables schedule compression, thereby helping you to deliver projects faster. In the next few slides, I'll be going in depth into each of these slides and explain what critical chain is, what blue ocean strategy is, and what are the benefits and how you will be able to do better. Before going into critical chain, all of you would be familiar with critical path or the networking technique. As said in PMBOK, critical path, as a quick recap, is a sequence of project network activities which add up to the longest overall duration. And all of us know that critical path tasks have a zero float. So which means any delay in a task in a critical path would defer the project deadline, right? Now I'm going into critical chain, the next concept, and theory of constraints. So I would like to take a minute to go into theory of constraints. This was a framework which is created by Eliyahu Goldratt, who is a business management guru. He has written a lot of novels, business novels, starting with a book called The Goal. The Goal was the first book that was written on theory of constraints, and it was written in 1984. But it was predominantly for the manufacturing industry. The concepts remain the same. Later, Eliyahu Goldratt had done a lot of analysis and research, and he had released a book called Critical Chain in 1997. To understand theory of constraints, I'll give a small analogy which is predominantly used by Goldratt as well. So here is an example of a chain. Let's assume that you've got an iron chain, right, which is made up of a lot of loops which are connected through iron rods. And let's assume there are 30 of these loops which are connected with each other, which make this chain, and they're connected towards the end to end. Only one of the hooks that is connected in this loop is made of thread, right? So now we've got 29 loops which are made of iron and one loop which is made of thread. As a project manager, now we are asked, which of these links will determine the strength of the chain, right? If you thought the 29 of them are stronger, unfortunately that is not the answer. The weakest point here is a thread that is connecting the iron points. So the basic concept of the premises of theory of constraint is a chain is as strong as the weakest link. So this is to explain the theory of constraints. Now what does it mean to critical chain and what is it to do with the project management world? I'm now going to give you another example to explain critical chain further. So here is an example. There are 7 of the people who are climbing the mountain. That's another analogy. And you are the project manager who need to ensure that these 7 people have to reach to the top of the mountain. And you are given a goal. Like a chain, all these 7 people have to hold their hands with each other, and the project is said to be successful when all 7 of them reach the mountain top. So that is the objective that is given to you as the project manager. Now, similar to a project X environment, you know that all 7 of them will not climb the mountain at the same speed. You could have guys who will move faster, who will go medium pace, and be slower. The first assumption that will come to you is, okay, let me put the fastest guy in the front so that I will reach the project faster. So what will happen? You put the first guy at the top and then put the other guys behind him. What happens? The first guy will reach the top of the mountain faster, but the other 6 guys will be remaining behind. So your project is not successful. Your duration is getting delayed. Next option, you try to put the slowest guy in the middle. What happens? The first 3 people are moving faster. The 4th guy limits the speed of the people behind him, even though their capability is faster. So again, your project duration is not met because all 7 of them have to reach. Option 3, you put the slowest guy at the front. All 6 of them behind him are controlled by his speed, but the moment he steps into the top, in the next 5 minutes, all 7 of guys are at the top, and that is the longest duration that determines your project. So now, drawing an analogy to the chain example that we've seen, the weakest link is the resource who moves slowest in this chain of activities. As a simple example, I've said they're holding the hands with each other, so it's an easy correlation, which means in our day-to-day project also, we could have project which has got hundreds of resources, but if you've got even 5 guys who are moving at a slower pace and they're part of the critical path, they will limit the schedule duration, or they will determine when a project meets its goal. So let's have this concept in mind of theory of constraint and critical chain, and then we'll see how this is applied. And if you've seen PMBOK 4, critical chain was introduced as a new scheduling technique under the project time management chapter. After the critical path method, you will see a description of what critical chain is. So for now, let's hold on to this concept. If you're interested in knowing more details, you can Google on topics like theory of constraints or critical chain, and you'll see a lot of Wikipedias and internet sites that give you more information. Coming back to our concept, we said there are 3 topics. Critical path is explained, critical chain is explained. Now I'm going to take you to the next topic called blue ocean strategy, and then we'll go into critical path plus. Right? Blue ocean strategy is a book that was written in 2005 by Kim and Maybone. And what they did was, they did an analysis, both of these authors, you can again search on blue ocean strategy in Google later on. What they did was, they did an analysis over 100 years of 150 strategic moves that were done in 30 different industries, and they came out with this concept called blue ocean strategy. The main message that they are advocating in blue ocean strategy is that you stop benchmarking against competitors. What they say is, normally companies do a head-on-head competition, and which means they're competing with each other in a red ocean, right? It's a typical example that all of us know about this Pepsi versus Coke. If Pepsi and Coke are competing with each other, they're both in the cool drink business, which means it's the same line of business. They're competing for the same share of the pie, or the same pie, which means they're competing in the red ocean. And we've also heard the popular example of how Coke's CEO once said that, let's not compete with Pepsi or other products. Let's look at water as another example. And that's when he said, Coke versus water. So you look at water, which is totally different, and you look at a blue ocean strategy. So that's the premises in which blue ocean strategy is done. The aim of a blue ocean strategy is not to outperform the competition in the existing industry, but to create a new market space or a blue ocean. So whenever you have to create a new market space, be it in the project management, be it in the product creation, blue ocean strategy provides a lot of frameworks and it gives a step-by-step procedure. So as part of blue ocean strategy, there is one of the framework called strategy canvas, which I have leveraged on. What is strategy canvas? It is a diagnostic and action framework for building a compelling blue ocean strategy. I'll give you a case study of how it is done. It's basically a 2x2 matrix where you have competing factors put on the x-axis and you have offering level on the y-axis. And the red curve indicates the industry value curve. For example, if you look at Pepsi and Coke, you look at where is the industry operating today. And when you have to create a strategy for new one, that is the blue line, you decide on each of the competing factors what is going to be my position and then create your strategy around that. Wait for a minute where I'm showing you. This is a popular example which will exactly help you understand what a blue ocean strategy or a strategy canvas is. This is an example of Southwest. All of you know that Southwest is one of the popular airlines, and there have been a lot of case studies both about their strategy, their success story, and people engagement. So this is a case where Southwest Airlines wanted to decide their strategy, and they looked at all the other airlines. But what they did differently was they said, I'm not only going to compete with airlines, I am going to eat into a share of the pie of the car market of people who travel by car. So they said airlines is one of the competing factors, car is one of the competing factors, and I'm going to decide my strategy. And first, as we said, you need to mark what are the competing factors in which I'm going to compare. They decided that they will do it based on price, meals, lounges, seating choices, hub connectivity, friendly service, speed, and frequent departure. And this y-axis is the offering level, low and high. I'll give you an example. For example, if you look at the price, the car provides a very low price for a person who's traveling, whereas the airlines are very high. And Southwest Airlines decided that though I am an airline, I'm going to price lowest or closest to the car, but rather than the market line, other airlines. And if you move on, for example, lounges, the same way, you'll see where they did. The red is basically a strategy that they plan ahead of where they're going to compete. You'll see that their strategy was almost closer to the car for first 5. When it came to the friendly service, they said the cars don't provide a friendly service, whereas if you look at the airlines, they're providing a high friendly service. And they decided that the strategy for friendly service is going to be much more than the other airlines. The same is the case with speed as well. They said car is slower, airlines are faster, but my airline is going to be fastest than other airlines that are there in the industry. And frequent departures also, they said cars have highest frequent departures, so I will benchmark myself by having more departures than the other airlines but lower than the car. So first thing they decided, this is how my red line is going to be my strategy, and then they went ahead. So here you will see an example of how strategic canvas as a framework can be used to compare two disparate options and derive at a third option where you can create synergies. And thereby you create a blue ocean. So now we have seen critical path and critical chain and blue ocean strategy. Let's look at, there are a lot of areas in which a critical path and critical chain will overlap or complement each other, but there are few places where they'll differ. I'm not going to go in depth into various differentiating factors. A quick recap of what critical chain is explained in PMBOK 4. PMBOK 4 says that you decide the critical path, and after you decide the critical path, you enter the resource availability and determine the resource limited schedule. That is called as a critical chain, right? So in critical chain project management, the emphasis is on resources while in a critical path, it is on the milestones and each and every project resource utilization. The second focus is on the resources. No differentiation of critical or non-critical resources. Normally, we will be looking at billability. Am I ensuring that every guy is being billed or every guy is working at every point in time? At the critical resources, they will ensure that the critical chain is loaded with critical resources so they can deliver the projects faster. The third differentiating factor, again, because we focus on resource utilization, every task is monitored. Suppose there are 1,000 tasks that are there. The project manager runs around and ensures whether every task that is supposed to be happening this week is happening or not. The premises of Eliyahu Goldratt in critical chain is that the more a person multitasks, their productivity dips. So they avoid pressure on resources to multitask and they take this factor while they do the project planning. And the last one is in terms of milestone traction. For a project, if there are say 100 milestones that are there, in a critical path, typically we as project managers would try to ensure that all the 100 milestones that have to be focused at this point in time are focused on. Whereas in critical chain, the focus is on the project end date, the external dependent milestones, and the milestones which are on the critical chain. There is a limited focus that is given to the other milestones, but there is a lot of focus. Am I allowing any task to dip which will affect my project end date? Then I'll ensure that I reroute my resources from other tasks into this so my project doesn't slip. So these are the high-level comparisons. Now let's see how we are going to use the strategic canvas framework that we saw for the Southwest Airlines by looking at these two and then comparing, right? So here I'm looking at 4 parameters or the competing factors: focus on each milestone, focus on progress of all tasks, utilization of all resources, focus on critical resources, and buffer management. And if it's easy comparison that I've done in terms of low to high, but you can even do 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10. You can decide on how you're going to compare these factors. Because the competent factors will vary from environment to environment, I've done it as a low, medium, and high. And you would see that the tabular column that was seen earlier is now compared. We're saying the first 3 of them, utilization of all resources, for example, is high in a critical path. Critical resources focus is medium. Buffer management is less. All of us know of a buffer that is implicitly included in the project estimation in the critical path. For those of you who are not familiar with critical chain focuses a lot more on project buffers and feeding buffers. They have 2 kinds of buffers where explicitly you go and include a buffer at the project end, and you also have a feeding a buffer at the end of every milestone. So by monitoring the buffer management at various levels, you can see where there is a slack and ensure that the project is delivered on time. So that is the reason I'm saying in critical path the buffer management is low. So now let's look at critical chain and plot the same graph for critical chain here. You'll see focus on each milestone is relatively less. The reason is because the focus is more towards the critical chain activities here. Focus on all tasks is medium. Utilization of all resources is slightly above medium. The primary focus in a critical chain is on the critical resources. Whoever is highly productive in a project, a critical chain project manager will ensure that they are leveraged on and they are utilized, whereas low productivity resources could probably be idle once in a while. The second high factor in which critical chain is stronger is in terms of buffer management. Now, like how Southwest Airlines compared cars and other airlines and created their strategy, here is an example. You'll see that the blue indicates the critical path, red indicates the critical chain, and I'm now creating critical path plus. What is the definition of my critical path plus? What is going to be my strategy? Where am I going to position it? So while after you understand CP plus, you can go back and plot this graph based on your project environment and decide where you want to do it. But there are certain premises in which CP plus will differ, so I will highlight them to you. First, focus on each milestone. I'm saying it's relatively higher than the critical chain but closer to the critical path. CP plus doesn't violate any of the critical path principles. That was the premises that I had taken first. Second, focus on progress of all tasks. It wouldn't be as low as critical chain, but not as high as critical path, but it will be relatively lower. Where I'll differ is utilization of all resources. I will try to align more with the critical chain. And then focus on critical resources is much higher than the critical path. Closer analyst role as an example. If it's a manufacturing, so in each and every industry or the project, I'm giving examples in the IT context. In manufacturing, you could have a machinist, you could have an two is domain expertise, right? The domain expertise basically means the line in which you're doing the project. For example, it could be banking, insurance, airlines, biotech, manufacturing. So what is the domain in which you're doing the project? The third option is technical expertise. So based on the technology, it could be Java, Microsoft, or these kind of examples in technical expertise. And if it's a different industry, you could have different expertise in terms of the skill sets that is required for the project. And it is optional. If technical expertise is not applicable for a project, this expertise alone can be knocked off. And the fourth input is the project expertise. What does project expertise mean? It depends on the project environment, the process, the product knowledge, platform, or the framework, or the enhancements. Many a times you will see the legacy of a project knowledge is important for a guy to be productive, right? A client environment or a CMMI level 3 or a 5, what kind of process, what is the culture of the organizations, all these play a role in determining the project expertise. Right? So the 4 parameters that are taken as an input to derive the productivity index. How can you define the productivity index? Right? First one, there are 3 options in which you can define productivity index. If it is a smaller project, you can assign productivity index for every resource. Suppose you've got 5 guys or 10 guys, you can go and define it manually for each and every person. Option 2, if you've got a project, you would have a resource pool and an organizational database, and you can go and define it in the central pool, and you can import the resource capabilities into your project base. So this is more applicable for large projects or large scale, level and derive index. Right? So here is an example where you as a project manager derive the index for each and every resource. So this is more applicable for all kind of projects. Smart trying out something. This is a tale of how option C can be. CP plus is going to give you efficient and optimum resource loading. Step 1. We saw first parameter for determining productivity index is to define what are all the role families that I've got in my project. I've got Java, I've got Oracle, I've got BA. Suppose you've got manufacturing, you could define machine operator, tool engineer. So what are the groups of people capabilities that I'm going to have in my project? I've shown 5 resources and I'm saying what is the role family? The first person is a developer, the second person is a DBA, third person is a developer. So you could have a business analyst. So you go and map each and every resource into a role family. And you could have project manager and define yourself as a project manager. Right? The next step is to define 3 values. We saw 4 of them. We've defined role family. Second, third, and fourth parameters are here. It's up to you to decide how you want to determine the domain expertise. As an easy example, I'm saying you define low, medium, high as 3 values for each of these parameters. You could decide that instead of low, medium, high, I want to give a scale of 1 to 10. I want to define it as very good, good, satisfactory. So you could have a scale for each of these and define how you're going to do it. So in this example, I'm saying John Doe as a Java dev in the insurance industry, and I say that he's got low expertise in terms of domain. And as a project manager, I've defined for my project, anybody who's got less than 1 year of experience in the domain, I'm going to call it low. Again, you define what is low, medium, and high for each of the domain expertise. The next I'm saying technology expertise is a Java developer, and I say how many years of experience and what has been his quality. I say if he's been into Java development for less than 2 years, I call him low, 2 to 5 years medium, 5 years and above high, and in terms of his productivity in prior projects, and I can create a matrix around it. So I'm saying this person has got low expertise, low technology, and project expertise again is a project environment. So with this client in insurance, this person has worked for less than 6 months of how you as a project manager can define. So if you look at Oracle DBA, medium, high, and here you're saying Hasina Begum, for example, has got high domain expertise, which means has been in the insurance sector for more than 4 years. Technology expertise has got more than 8 years of experience. Project expertise, 2 years of experience in this client environment. So this is how I'm saying, based on the project context, the reason why these are important is, many a times you will see, for example, a high potential person who's working in insurance sector, you move this Java developer and put her into another project, which is say in a manufacturing or a biotech, only do a productivity. Because the domain is different, she may not be as effective in the new project as old. So that is the reason I brought in technology expertise. The same applies to project expertise, which is based on a process-oriented environment. The person moves into another stakeholder management, your influential skills, and how you connect with each other. Project expertise is important, and the step 3 is to define the 3 parameters. Next going to be the weightage for each expertise. So you are the project manager, and you have defined, I've got 3 expertise or job families as developer, DBA. For easy example, I've just put these 3 roles, so don't be constrained by it. So you as a project manager have defined 1, 2, and 3, and then the phraseology and project. You now need to fill in each of the columns and say, for a developer in this project, how much of domain knowledge is expert. For example, if it is an enhancement to a product, domain expertise is very important in doing experience rather than the Java development alone. So you say, in this project, I want 50% and I want 20% project expertise weightage. And you define, I need a guy who's 80% well-versed in Oracle DBA, right? But at the same time, it's not enough if he has 0% knowledge of domain or project expertise. I want him to have 10% domain expertise, 10% project. And for a business analyst, you say that it's not enough if I just go and pick up an SME from the industry and ensure that he's only 100% in terms of domain. I want the BA who's got 60% weightage for domain, who's able to understand technology and talk to the technology team. So 20% of technology expertise is required so that he can prioritize requirements, communicate with the customers. And the business analyst expertise is important as well. So I say 20% project expertise. So this is basically an example of how you as a project manager will define each of the columns. So if it's a fresh project, you cannot get people with domain experience at all. But if it's a domain that's been there in the industry for quite some time, then you start giving expertise. So for every project environment, the best judge to define what your weightage is. Right? Now that we've defined, let's see how we are able to derive the productivity index of a person. Earlier we saw the speed at which a person can give the output is going to determine the productivity index. Now we are saying 30%, 50%, 20% as weightage for a developer, right? In this example, we saw 30, 50, and 20, which I'm cascading here as 30, 50, and 20. Now I'm defining index number. I'm saying low means 0.6 for me, 0.8 for me, and 1 for me for domain. Low means 0.6, 0.8, and 1.5. Saying if a person, I'm just looking at an easy example where I've got a developer and who's got medium expertise in all. The productivity index of a developer with medium index is derived using this formula. It's basically a weighted average of these 2 columns, weightage for the developer and medium. So I say 30% into 0.8 plus 50 into 0.6, which is equal to 0.76. So if I've got all the 3, I derive the formula as a weighted average of these 2 columns and I derive. So this is a simple example I've shown to say somebody is at a medium. But most commonly you will have somebody who is at different positions in each of these matrices. So I'm now going to explain that here. High technology expertise and low project expertise, right? So I'm saying my proficiency levels are this. So based on this, I can go back and look at, for a proficiency of medium, for a developer, what was the index I had given? Proficiency of medium was 30% for a developer, right? And for medium, it was 0.8. So I come and fill it up as 0.8. Then I go to technology expertise, this person is high. And for technology expertise, I had defined for a developer it is 50%. So I pick up this, look up this table and pick up 50. And then I say this guy is high for a developer. How much have I put? 1.5. So I bring the 1.5 here. So these two columns are derived by doing a lookup on the previous two tables, and now I do the same formula of a weighted average, 0.5, 20% into 0.5, 1.09. Right, what does 1.09 mean? If I give a work which I as a project manager assume is going to take 8 hours, this person will do it much faster. If I had a similar scenario like 0.76, which means that if I'm assuming it is going to take 10 hours, this person is probably how it translates finally, right? So now I'm going to show in a project live example. We've seen these 5 projects are there, roles is defined. By applying the formula that we saw in tables, you derive the productivity index and bring them, upload them here. 0.6, Sean is at 1, Kelvin is at 2.1. So these are auto-populated by doing it. Now I'm going to go and then see the path scenario and CP. I'm giving an example here where so it's a simple project where you've got 160 hours, and what is the mandate calculation? We say overall project effort, by effort per day for one resource. So we said 160 is the duration assigned, divided by 8, which is 20. So this is the traditional critical path method, how we will do it. So if we use any of the current project management tools and we go and define these 5 resources and then put in the duration as 160 hours, automatically the tool will say 20, 20, 20 for each of them. Assuming this is like a chain and it's a simple project where there is a dependency of each of them to finish. After the first guy finishes, the second guy starts, third person, fourth and fifth, which means the total duration or the critical path duration here is 100 days. This is the traditional way that we've done. Now let's look at how does CP plus refers to critical path plus. How does it do? Here again is the same example of 160 hours as the duration, and the mandate is derived by deriving overall effort by effort per day of one resource. The new factor that I'm introducing is I'm bringing in productivity index in the denominator. This is something new, right? For example, if you look at productivity index, how did I derive? So I'm saying 1.5 is here, 160 is the duration which is given on the top, and our assumption is 8 hours per day for this project. So 160 divided by 8, this project you'll see the mandate that is required for Hasina Begum is 13. If a productivity index is 2.1, what does this indicate? Kelvin can produce more than 200%. Productivity index is high, and I apply this formula, Kelvin is able to do at 10 days, right? And this will help you to enable deliver projects faster when you have high productivity resources. But at the same time, I also said it will help you to predict delays earlier. So you'll see an example here. John Doe has got a very low productivity. Let's assume John Doe is a trainee or a newcomer to the project. Because he is new, his in itself, when you derive the schedule, CP plus will tell you that this person is going to take 33 days and not 20 days. But you will see that your project duration is 93 days. Now, first let's see how the formula is different. And additional way we've done, in most of the project management tools do it this way, overall effort by effort per day of one resource. In CP plus, the USP or the differentiator, please note this point is very critical. We are bringing in a factor of productivity and we're using it in the denominator to derive the, go to the same example, and I'll tell you, well, the column in blue indicates, as we already know, independent of the productivity of the person, critical path and critical path plus columns are picked from the previous tables. So I'm saying assuming sequential work, 23 days, right? And your Kelvin and critical path can be done in 10. So you get a more practical estimate of when your project is going to be done. 160 hours of work, I'm again giving examples rather than X and Y, so it's easy for anybody to do a calculation. Takes 20 man days in critical path. The differentiation is independent of the resource capabilities, because many a times our people will stretch and then put an extra work productivity delay. Whereas here, you can predict it upfront and you will have a relatively better work-life balance for resources as well, because you as a project manager will be more successful in predicting the project success. So here in critical path, it's independent of the resource capabilities. Whereas in CP plus, as we said, the task can be completed faster if the productivity of the index of the person is greater than 1. And it takes longer if productivity index of the resource is less than 1. So when you put a trainee, you know upfront that it is going to be delayed. But because you've considered the productivity of the person upfront, you'll be more realistic and it increases the probability of completion on time. Right? Both of these are the compelling factors. As project managers, we need to deliver project faster and we should be able to predict or increase the probability of completion on time. So as an organization, if we focus on improving the productivity increase, then CP Plus enables to deliver faster. Now that we have seen what is CP Plus and how does it help, we've understood the concept, we've gone into productivity index formula, we've seen how it is defined. So how can we do schedule compression? When a critical path changes, many often we'll have one or two critical paths and we'll be playing around with it. Whereas now we are saying with the increasing challenges, any of the constraint changes or the volatile requirement changes, the critical path is going to be more dynamic. It's going to change from time to time. So as a project manager, we've seen the example of mountain climbing. We cannot afford to have a weak resource. In a critical path, we will ensure that we put the strongest guy in the critical path for the first time. But when scenarios changes and your critical path changes, we do not know whether there is a less complex task that is coming into it, where a weaker resource has been put, who is holding the whole duration of the project. So when critical path changes, or you need to compress schedule, do a simulation with alternate resources with high productivity index. So now you have a database of each of the resources, and you know this person is at 0.6, this person is at 1.5, this person is at 2.1, right? So you can do a simulation or a what-if analysis. And then next thing is important, because the control is with you as a project manager, you assess the impact of the overall schedule, cost, and resource loading and select the best option. Right? Sometimes when you put in high productivity resources, if it is a T&M project and you've got a varying billing rate for different resources, your cost could go up, right? So you should be able to do a comparison of the cost versus schedule and accordingly select the best option. The third step is to assign resources with high productivity index to compress the schedule, right? And we said because it is dynamic, it is imperative for you to keep an eye on the changing critical path and load them accordingly. And as we keep loading critical resources into the critical path activities, we need to reassign or do the resource leveling. I would leave this slide for a moment. Please read it and digest it, because this is important differentiator of CP Plus before we proceed further. And then if there are any questions, I would take them now, before we go into discussing how you can implement CP Plus in your projects. I'm opening the question channel. Okay, there is a question, how do we manage buffers in CP Plus as opposed to critical chain? As I said earlier, critical chain does two kinds of buffer management, project buffer and feeding buffer, whereas here the buffer is only in terms of the productivity index. Normally we are assuming so far that the productivity index of a person is 1 when we do the estimate, right? When a productivity index of all the resources is 1, CP and CP Plus would be the same. So each and every organization can compete by having a baseline productivity index for an organization. Based on my database of 500 people and the developer community, I'm going to use an estimate of 0.7 for my estimate, right? And if you do a fixed bid and you're able to deploy resources at say 0.9 as an average, then that is the buffer that you've got there and you will be able to deliver projects faster. I'm not going in depth and doing a project buffer and a feeding buffer in CP Plus. This is how, in terms of the productivity index, is how a buffer can be managed. Okay, there is a question, is there a template readily available to calculate the productivity based on the weightage entered by the project manager? I have given all these formulas and you will be able to go and include it in the tool, because in our organization we had our own internal tool and we were able to plug the formula into it. So you can go and try creating the formulas. Everything has been made explicit in the presentation, and Vivek will be sharing the presentation with you later on. So you can create your own tools or go and amend your project management tools to include these formulas. A template is not readily available. The next question. During the planning phase, when we are doing estimation, we will not have our team marked down to the exact person. So in this, we cannot apply the CP Plus to derive the schedule. Do you agree? It will definitely be useful when we revisit the schedule based on the resources added to the team to determine the realistic schedule or doing enhancements to an existing product whenever already have a team in place. You're right here. In terms of enhancements, it is easy to predict when you know who is the resource pool. That's the reason I gave an example. When you submit estimates and you want to adopt CP+, you need to decide saying that I'm going to try it out for the first time, and based on my database, first is to create a database. The next few minutes I'll be explaining how to implement CP+ in your organization. So you as an organization have to decide, am I going to use one? That's the ideal scenario, right? All of us know that there are so many distractions for people, and especially with Gen Y entering into the workforce, it will be very tough to expect somebody to sit in a desk. And here again, we're not determining how much time the person spends in front of the laptop, rather by how much is the output they're producing. So you could decide, I'm going to use 0.6 for my estimates, but when it comes to reality, I will load people who are at a 0.8. Thereby I gain an advantage, or vice versa. So that's how we'll be able to look at an assumption of a productivity index average for an organization earlier, and then later on you will be able to change it as your organization matures. So after a year or so, you could probably say, last year I've used 0.7 for my estimate. Now I've improved the capabilities of my team. As you mature and create an organizational database of your productivity index, you would know in each of the domains, let's say insurance and banking and airline, which area am I lacking as an organization, right? Probably you could see that in biotech I have relatively lesser domain expertise, which is hindering my productivity. Whereas in a different technology like Java, you could see that I've got very good people, but in terms of DBAs, I don't have a pool. When you go into project expertise, you could see that you have successful with the top 5 clients, but the next 5 clients you don't have data. So as you mature as an organization, your productivity database will help you to identify your weakness in the system, and as you improve, the next year you'll be able to estimate at a much higher speed. The next question is from Mel Clifford. I might have missed out, where does CP+ take into consideration the learning curve of experiences gained in the overall project for productivity? Very good question, Clifford. What I would be suggesting in the next slides, I'll be explaining how you implement. When a project has started, let's assume it is a 15-month project. A guy who's starting a project at 0.8 will not complete the project at 0.8. Predominantly, his index will move up when he completes the project, because there is a learning in terms of the project, in terms of domain, in terms of technology. So we say that you go back and rebaseline these indices for a person when a project is complete. So that way, when they go into the pool, the learning curve is taken care and your productivity index improves. I would just take one question before we move on to the next session. Any suggestions on developing the productivity index for an organization, or should we use a methodology like PSP-TSP? I've given a productivity index formula here, and you can overlap with any of the methodologies that you've got in your organization, and you could create your own framework. Due to lack of time, I'm moving on back to the session, and if there are some more questions, we'll take them later on.
I think, Ambal, there's only one question left.
So what we've seen so far. Okay, sorry. I will just take the last question also, which is there. Okay, productivity will be taken care while estimating the work based on domain expertise and technology expertise. What is the difference here? The difference here is in terms of domain expertise is a line of business in which we are doing a project for a client, whereas technology expertise is in terms of Java or Microsoft that we're doing. Predominantly, when we do traditional estimations, we will look at how many guys do I have on Java, right? If I've got a pool of 100 guys who worked on Java for 3 years, my average productivity is X or Y. Or I look at the LOC data and I say, I have an organization where people can deliver better than the benchmark. Predominantly, we do estimations based on technology expertise. We look at the domain expertise for estimation for primarily roles like business analyst and tester, but not for a developer or a DBA or an analyst. Whereas this framework helps a project manager to define what the matrix is for the project and accordingly do the estimations. That's how it is different. Thank you, Vivek, for the prompting. I think we've taken up all these questions. If some of you are not convinced, you could probably let us know later on, and we'll come back with clarifications. So far what we have seen, we started off the session with what are the challenges in the project managers. Then we went on to understand the concepts of critical chain and blue ocean strategy. We looked at an example of Southwest Airlines and created CP Plus using the same analogy. We understood what productivity index is, and we saw the formula for calculating the duration for a task based on CP Plus, and we saw how CP Plus can help deliver a project faster at a much lesser duration. Now we'll see, if you are interested in CP Plus and if you want to implement in your projects or in your organizations, what are the 9 steps that you have to do? Step number 1 is automate the CP Plus calculation. Somebody was asking about it. It depends on what environment you're doing it. If it is a very small project, you could start it with an Excel macro. If it is a Microsoft project kind of tools, you could start automating this in your environment, or you could decide, I will not mend with my regular tool. I will do this offline and have an additional framework that I develop for my project, and I'll use that for my calculations. So first step is to automate. You decide on how you're going to automate these calculations. Which tool? Will it be a wrapper? Will it be a separate? Or will you do an export and import between different environments? Second step is to refine the project management and productivity metrics for CP+. So this is the weightage that we saw earlier. You need to define what are all the role families, and for each of them the 30, 50, 20 kind of metrics that you have to define. This is the productivity metrics that I'm going to use for this project. And you should also look at how is the project management successfully measured by the management, and how you will depict these in terms of, as a project manager, if say you've got 50 resources when you start a project and your average productivity is 1.2, and if you complete a project and you say, I take a goal in my project management plan that I will improve the productivity of my project resources from 1.2 to 1.5, that's documented in your document. Right? So that is something which will help the management to also observe if CP Plus is helping them to deliver projects faster over a period of time. The third step is to train the project managers on CP Plus framework, because if you have multiple people, they all need to understand how this is different from the traditional methods, and awareness is critical at this stage. Right? Step 4. You need to define the matrix for your project, which is one of the tables that we saw earlier. If you go back and look into the slides later on, you will be able to see how we defined the 3x3 matrix for the project. The next is define expertise levels for each end resource. Right? This is defining what low, medium, and high means. You could design, I have given a simple example where you can have 3 grades of low, medium, and high, and define what low, medium, and high for each of them. If it's a as you get more familiar with this framework, you could say 3 grades are not enough for me. I am going to define 5 grades of a scale of 1 to 5, and what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 means. Or you could say, I'm going to make it simple of very good, not good, happy, poor, those kind of things in terms of, so you could define low, medium, high definition for each of the 4 resources for core categories that you've got, and you need to define it for each and every resource. So that way you say low, low, medium, medium, low, high, the table that we saw earlier. That is what the 5th step means. The 6th step is, when you look at the critical path, the first thing that we all define the project network diagram. In the tool, the first thing that we normally look at is the project schedule, and many times in today's environment we are forced to work backwards. Right? All of us are very good at schedule compression and fast tracking and crashing. Right? The reason is because today customers give an end date, and we have to work backwards and deliver the projects within them. So first look into the critical path. Path has got 1000 days. By loading people with high productivity resources, you'll be able to from 1000 days duration to probably 950. Right? So you can assign critical resources to critical path. You can simulate them and see how the simulation looks like. Step number 7. This was a good question that Clifford had asked. On project closure, I've given a simple example of going back and refining the expertise level of resources. Let's say a person started with low, medium. And you could say when the project is completed, I'm now certifying that this person has moved to medium, and high, right? Which means overall the example approximately could be 0.6 has become 0.8 when the project person is moving out of my project, right? So that is what here I've given. If you have projects that are running for 4 or 5 years, you could define that every 6 months or every 1 year I will go back and redefine my database. Or you could say, not only at project closure, whenever I ramp down and release a resource, I will do this expertise level as a project manager for a person when they move out of my project. So the new project manager who gets this person will know what is the capability, right? So as a guideline, I've given project closure, but you could define how frequently you want to do it in your environment. The next important step is, you may say that, what is in it for the developer to deliver faster? If I give an 8-hour work, and if there are 10 guys, and there are 4 guys who stretch and then they do, and there are some guys who just don't matter. So the important success factor is to link the performance appraisal of the resources to the productivity index, right? Their promotion should be based on the productivity index that they have got. So that will be the motivation factor for them to undertake the training and learn the knowledge and get your acknowledgement that their skill levels have improved, and then you could do it. So this is the critical step. So you will have to work with your HR teams to see how we are going to link it to the performance appraisal and create the transparency. And the next step is rebaseline productivity index of the organization and use for future estimate. Right? This is the example where I was saying overall your project is start with 0.8. You had a goal to reach 0.95, but when you complete probably you are at 0.93. But at least you know of the 50 people that I started, this is where I am. So when each and every project manager rebaselines the productivity index for their project or for their resource, overall at an organization level, management would be able to monitor how the productivity index of the organization is maturing or dipping over years. Why am I saying dipping here? Because by nature, experienced resources could leave the system or the company or the organization, and you could have freshers being injected into the system. So the management needs to focus on looking at how do I balance experienced resources versus new resources, and at the same time focus on productivity index improvement. So as a summary, the first slide that we saw is the key challenges that you got as project managers. The 4 of them, we said increasing complexity, volatile requirements, need for speed, do more for less. And we've seen if you adopt critical path plus, you can deliver projects faster with the same resources. We've seen if I had 6 guys, we didn't change the 6 guys, we used the same guys, and a 100-day project was delivered in 93. The same is the case if you've got 500 guys, and if you have to deliver a 10,000 man-day project, you can deliver 10,000 in 9,000 itself. It depends on what the productivity index of your organization. The second, we said, as we induct trainees or new people into the system, you will be able to predict delays much ahead. We saw an example of a resource with a productivity index of 0.6. At the scheduling time itself, your schedule took care of the 33 days instead of 20 days. So the person upfront knows that they are going to take 33 days, and the project manager also knows that it will take 33 days, and there is no surprise that comes at the last minute. And one more advantage that you would see in this methodology is that the dependency on the project manager in terms of skill set. Many a times we do these assessments, but if you've got 50 guys, the project manager or the immediate manager or the lead would have the knowledge about the expertise of the people. By documenting and creating a framework like this, we are ensuring that the resources, expertise are documented and they're available in the organizational database. So when they move from one project to another project, the new project manager doesn't have to start the assessment from the scratch. There is a baseline data available, but probably there are areas like domain. For example, when a person from a manufacturing project with an index of 1.2 moves into a biotech project, and because of the new index, when you start the project, you will see the 1.2 person in a previous project has become 0.8 because you have given a weightage for biotech experience, and the person becomes low when you look at a biotech. So it's more practical and you will be able to predict better. So overall, as we had said, the objective of critical path plus methodology as a scheduling technique is to help you as a project manager to deliver projects faster and predict delays much ahead. Thank you. Now I open for any questions that are coming up.
Yeah, it's open now. So anybody has any question can ask. Okay, we have the questions are coming up, right?
Thank you, Clifford. He said, excellent presentation, one of the best, lots of interesting points and useful concepts to support project delivery. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Okay, there is a question on domain from Lijo. Domain expertise and technology expertise, what is the difference? I think there was a similar question sometime back. We explained saying that domain expertise is about the line of business like insurance or banking or airlines or biotech, whereas technology expertise is around the platforms like Java or Microsoft. For example, if you're in a manufacturing industry and you've got a machine operator, right? Your technology expertise will become whether the person knows how to operate that or in terms of the processing that needs to be done. So though it is technology expertise, based on your industry, you could define what it is. Productivity will be taken care while estimating the work based on domain expertise and technology expertise. We have seen this question.
I think, Ambal, there is one more question. Is if higher productivity resources are not available, CP plus tends towards CP.
CP plus tends towards CP. Is it correct? Okay. If a productivity index of all the people are at 1, CP and CP plus is the same. Because we are saying that a project manager expects something out of a resource and all of them exactly deliver on dot. But that is hardly a scenario because it's more ideal and sounds theoretical, because we obviously know in any project you will have people with high and low productivity. So if the productivity index of an organization is less than 1, right, and if your estimation has been done with less than 1, you will be able to deliver the project. But if you have assumed a productivity index of 1 and the average index is less than 1, CP plus will help you to identify that the project is in red on day 1 itself. You'll know that you've got low quality resources and you need to focus on improving the skill set of your people or add people with more productivity index from the market. So rather than getting a heads up around a UAT or a testing phase, you get a heads up as a project manager at the planning phase itself that you will not be able to deliver this project on this date with the given set of resources, and it's a good data for you to go back to management and ask for good quality resources. I assume I've taken up all the questions. If there are any questions, we'll wait for 5-10 more minutes.
Yeah, we can wait for a couple of minutes, and if people have any questions, please.
Yeah.
Will this slide be shared? Yes. I will upload the presentation on the site. We will send you the mail and you can download it. One more question has come up that CP plus can apply for other industry like manufacturing. It appears to me like CP plus is more suitable for software development projects.
Yeah, this question is from Venkatesh Hari Rajan.
Yes.
The examples that I've quoted here are from software development projects because the industry predominantly that I've worked in is software development. But it can be applied to manufacturing as well. In fact, the theory of constraints or the goal book is more around the manufacturing industry. If you're interested, you could get the book called Goal and you can read how the productivity index of an organization or a constraint is managed and a project or a manufacturing project is delivered much faster. So all you need to do in a manufacturing industry is look at domain. Within manufacturing, you will have chemical, you will have lot more automobile, lot more divisions under that. If you look at the next parameter in terms of technology expertise is the only area where you will have to define in terms of technology expertise instead of Java and Microsoft. Here I will define it in terms of the skill sets that are required for manufacturing. Say tool operating as one skill set of technology expertise. The domain expertise we have seen. Project expertise is in the manufacturing, or if it is civil also, for example, if I have to construct a dam or if I have to do a railroad project, how many people have worked on a railroad project whom I am bringing in? That is going to define the productivity index. If you just take people who are out of college and put them into a manufacturing project, they're not going to be productive on day one. So the productivity index as a concept can be applied to all technology, all platforms, independent of it, the domain. The only thing where you'll have a catch is that technology expertise that is defined in this framework has to be rephrased as the manufacturing expertise. What are the various manufacturing expertise based on which you group your own people and based on which you can record the productivity index? There is a question from Oscar. Where does blue ocean strategy come in the example provided? As I said earlier, I've used the concept of blue ocean strategy of how I can think laterally. I've leveraged on the strategy canvas framework of blue ocean strategy where we saw a 2x2 matrix, and I've used it to combine two disparate methodologies of critical path and critical chain, right? Of how Southwest Airlines used airlines and car, which are two disparate industries, and they created Southwest Airlines strategy. I have used an example of critical path and critical chain, which are considered to be two disparate methodologies, and I've used that to determine critical path plus. So blue ocean strategy was the one which helped me to see how can I bring the concept of critical chain into critical path. And what struck me was the constraint or the throughput that is defined in critical chain. Then when I thought back, I said throughput in the manufacturing industry that Eliyahu Goldratt defined is probably what we call as productivity index. But traditionally, for some reason, we have not accounted for the productivity index of a resource either in estimation or in scheduling. So this strategy framework helped me to bring critical chain concepts into critical path. Is CP Plus already implemented in majority of the IT companies? Any case studies? This was implemented in our organization alone. There is not many case studies in the industry because this is the first time I had gone and presented this outside our organization in the scheduling conference in New York, and it was early this year. So if some of you implement, and you could probably keep Vivek and me posted, and we could probably see if we have a lot more case studies in the months to come. Clifford has again acknowledged, I strongly feel CP Plus can be applied to the majority of most projects. Thanks. Any other questions? We'll wait for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Okay, there is a question. Thanks Ambal and Vivek for this useful webinar. And is there any open source tools which can bring this concept? There are no open source tools in the market because this is the concept that I had invented and we had implemented and we had gone and presented in a conference. So as of now, it's more internal to the organization and it was presented in the PMI conference. And that's how we felt that it is useful to the PMP community or the project management community, and we're bringing this is a second presentation that we're doing to the industry. So as it matures, probably over a point in time, we could see open source tools in the market. And if you develop one in future, if any of you, and if you're interested in sharing with other teams, you could probably share it on to Vivek, who will have the contact communication, and whoever wants to share the tool or the template, we'll be happy to get it from you and share it with more people who are asking for it. But as of now, it's not available.
If any of you want to implement this strategy, please let us know, and I think Ambal will be able to help you out. And I hope that there will be some free tool will come out from this exercise. Okay, I think Amal, we should close it now. I think there are not more questions coming up on this. So thanks, Ambal, for which I will say indeed it was an excellent presentation. And also thanks to all the participants for taking out time and joining this webinar. I hope you found it interesting and knowledgeable. We will send you an email which you can use to claim your PDUs and a link to provide the feedback, which is very important to us. If you are interested in implementing this technique, please do mention so in the feedback, and we see we'll be able to help you out in implementing it. Thanks again to all of you, and we can close it now.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivek, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye, all of you.